Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Grown Mannerisms, being fluid with the currents of life. I'm John.
I'm Giovanna, also known as Vonnie.
And today we're going to talk about identity and how our high school years or our high school experiences kind of shape our identity for the rest of our lives in a lot of cases. You know, we're going to talk about how I became me, she became she, you became you, we became we. You know what I mean?
Yeah, so this is the type of thing whereas while you're living it in those formative years where your identity's being shaped in those like teenage years, like you don't know your thing or your niche or your why. And then you become an adult and like, oh, this is when you look back, it's like, oh, this is why I acted like this or I thought like this or I did what I did because this is where I am.
With identity, so sometimes so much our identity is shaped by outside sources and outside forces.
Yeah.
Some of us have the ability and some of us don't to really force our identity on the outside world. And I think that we living in a time now where identity and how people want to identify is being pushed to the forefront. And and then it becomes a quintessential question of, am I now forced to change the way I think in order to accommodate someone else's identity? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And this is not a conversation about that, but that just goes to show how you view yourself is directly impacted by how people view you. Because if someone calls you a certain adjective that you don't want to be associated with, then it's kind of like, no, you must call me this. And then the person on the other side be like, I don't care what you call yourself, but this is what I see and this is what I say.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And then it's this clash. The hardest part when you coming up with identity is that, do you create your identity, or is your identity defined by the people who label you? You know what I'm saying?
Right. I think as an adolescence, it's probably a blend. And then as you grow, you hopefully start to shed what you find that others have put on you as their expectations.
Because it's a very interesting subject and topic, because I know a lot of people who, they were cool in high school, now they're 40 years old, and they still think they're cool.
Yeah.
And they may not be cool anymore.
Right.
And there's a lot of people who, they'll call themselves a nerd, and I'm like, what make you a nerd? I think you're kind of cool. They be like, well, in high school, and I'm like, it's very, funny and interesting that people, even at this advanced age, even though you're not, no matter what advanced age you are, that we tend to, go back to our formative years and base our identity around that, for good or ill. Sometimes it'll shape us and we'll stay in that vein. Go back to Al Bundy, how Al Bundy was high school, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Football, he wasn't the Heisman.
Oh, I thought he was a winner.
Yeah, the Heisman is college.
Okay.
High school, but so I don't know what exactly he won in high school. I think he just won the high school state championship. But it was just funny on Married with Children to see him still reliving those glory years while he working at a shoe store.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Miserable at home.
Right.
I think that's the first years where maybe like when you're young, all you know is like your household routine, what you do with your siblings, what you may do with your extended family. And then like by the time you get into middle and high school, it's like your first taste of like the world. And then you kind of like judge yourself according to that lens. And if you don't like mature out of it, you kind of get stuck. Yeah.
But then sometimes we have the opposite, that grandiose opinion of ourselves, which I guess is good in the way of self-esteem, but it could be bad in the sense of, I don't want to call people out particularly, because, everybody is fine to do what they want. But, that's when you see the people of a certain age group that's in the 20-year-old clubs. And, you know what I mean? I still got it.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Because they never understood that you ain't got it no more.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? But in other cases, it'll spur you to make a change and be completely opposite of what you were considered then.
Right.
I didn't have a particular
Like,
clique or, like, I wasn't the jock. I wasn't the... You know what I mean? Like, I kind of...
The standard groups that
I was able to kind of flow. I only have one friend that I actually made in school. So shout out to my man Park. But I always hung with or sat at the table with the cool girls. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so...
I didn't. At all.
So I was accepted by that crew, but it was it was the girls, but then with the dudes, I was cool. I was cool with some of the nerds. I was cool with the kids that the cool girls wanted to talk to.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I didn't have much stigma attached to me in school. I don't have much in the way of how school shaped me, but those years shaped me a lot because a lot of the things that I did at that time, I associated with that as that's who I am.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Right. This is just me probably not digging deep enough, but I don't have any correlations between my identity then and my identity now. I was under the radar in high school. I still kind of feel under the radar with how I live and how I operate, how I am at work. I feel like I'm just kind of like,
But see, that can go to that's not being your high school experience. That could have been you, and that's how you survived through high school. Because I was going to say something similar. You being under the radar wasn't based off of high school shaping you that way. It's just kind of like that's who you are, and that's how you went through those years.
okay.
You know what I mean?
I do know one thing for sure because of how I behave. Group work. Now, in high school, it just I just feel like the person who always get like the short straw or something. Like whenever we have like time for group work, I always felt invisible, and it's probably because my personality isn't like real forward. So maybe I'm quiet and everybody's like, well, all right, well, let's just go ahead and get this done. And then I end up feeling ignored, and it's this weird back and forth thing. And so like even at my age, I'm like, as soon as somebody's like, all right, let's get together in groups, I'm like, ugh. Like as old as I am, it's like I'm not trying to hear nothing about no group work. And I know it started back then because I remember some kind of project and like these, it was like maybe 5 of us, and it's like I like said something like, well, why don't we do this? And it was like totally ignored, and I was like, I never said anything again. Like,
You the flashback scene in the movie. You know how the movies start?
Yeah.
And the person got to go to the high school reunion and they flashback into that moment.
Yeah.
And I was the opposite because we were similar in the sense of we flew under the radar. But I loved group assignments because I was like, this is where I get to show how smart I am.
Okay.
And I think it was because I have, if I want to pat myself on the back a little bit, I have pretty good communication skills and some leadership qualities. So I knew in a group setting, I don't talk or put myself out there or impose myself on people in individual settings. So I ain't raising my hand answering no questions. If somebody got a question, even if I know the answer, I ain't gonna be like, yo, this is blah, 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 blah. But so I never spoke in class at all. So when we got in the groups, nobody expected me to contribute much. But when I got in a group, even when people didn't realize it, most of the project became my thoughts. You know what I'm saying? I'm just like, oh, well, that's cool, but I was thinking we da-da-da-da-da, but, I mean, either way is cool.
Yeah.
But it was only in the projects I was interested in doing, which was mostly, like, plays, anything that involved writing characters, reading something, and then presenting it in front of the class.
Yeah.
If it was like a science, I never did one science project my whole life. And any other type of assignment, I wasn't doing it. But if it had anything to do with English, writing, presenting something in front of a class or something like that, then I was all for it.
Yeah. I was a co-editor of my high school's published poetry book. So like I kind of shined with that, at least with my like involvement and my dedication to it. But if it was outside of like creative writing class, I don't know if I contributed much of anything. And not that I couldn't, I just kind of felt alone. Even though they were friends that I had, but I don't know. Maybe I'm just being weird. I don't know.
Another thing those high school years shaped for me was my interaction with women.
Okay.
That has not changed since high school. I'm going to be very careful how I say this because it's not universally across the board, and this is not an indication how people felt about me. This is just me projecting how I thought people felt.
Yeah.
Okay? So that's what I want to be clear on. Because I always was cool with the cool girls. Or I don't even like using that word, but y'all get what I'm saying by saying that, because I'm talking about these cliques, the pretty girl clique or whatever the case may be. So because I was always cool with the girls that everybody else in the neighborhood wanted, sometimes it built this this barrier of, yeah, I mean, you know, I got my fair share of attention, obviously, but
Obviously.
I got my fair share, but sometimes I would run into the problem of people would look at me like a friend.
Mm-hmm.
And then it was just like, it might be the girl I really, really like. And I'm like, all right, bet, I'm in there. And she was like, oh, John, we cool. And I'm like, yeah, and now we're going to be more than cool. And it's just like, no, we're cool. So like I said, it wasn't that I didn't get a constant flow of attention, but I did notice that every once in a while that friend zone would come hit it up because I was so cool.
Okay.
And I noticed that as I got older, when I was dealing with those type of women, even if they were showing me they wanted, you know, we may have, you know, some grown adult interaction. In my mind, I'm like, all right, this is about as far as they're going to go because they're going to look at me like I'm cool.
Mm-hmm.
So then I would already kind of be like, friend zone them
Okay.
before they friend zone me.
Get ahead of it.
Yeah, get ahead of it.
Okay.
You know what I mean? And that was shaped by the fact that, again, like I said, I'm not saying that, you know, anybody treated me unfairly or da-da-da-da.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said, back then, I got my fair share. But like I said, I got friend zoned enough by the girls I really, really wanted.
Mm-hmm.
I shouldn't say that. We might have to edit that part out.
Wonder who's listening.
You know, growing up, you know, it's funny. I never heard. I don't know if girls do it, but I don't know if church girl has a negative connotation around girls. But I know church boy meant that you wasn't.
You was a sucker.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
So if anybody ever seen you go to church, it's like, oh, he a church boy.
Right. Okay.
So-
So for girls, it's like you're a prude or the opposite of a prude. I'm not going to put any of those adjectives there.
Well, because I know, you know, my mother had us in church heavy. And so,
Prude or promiscuous, I can say those.
yeah.
Prude or promiscuous.
Yeah.
No in between. No, just regular.
Uh-huh. And for guys, when we thought about church girls, it was the same way. And girls didn't want church boys because they was the goody two-shoes.
Uh-huh.
But guys, in turn, wanted the church girl because of the promiscuous part that was assumed about church girls. So it's an interesting how with girls, the boys are kind of like, nah. But for the guys, the girls is like, yeah. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Which I remember an instance with somebody, and it was just one person that this happened with. It wasn't even nothing major. I was talking a certain way. And then somebody said, oh, look at the church boy. And I looked around because I was like, and it was a natural, and it wasn't even that looking around like, I know he ain't talking to me type of thing.
Right.
I legit didn't think he was talking to me
Right.
because I looked around and I was like, oh, he calling me the church boy. At first I was offended because I know what it meant. But then the spiritual side of me was just like, well, don't be offended to be called the church boy. Because I was about to say, yo, I ain't no.
Yeah.
But then I was like, all right, that's cool. I'll be the church boy. But, you know, if you just, you know, how you going to feel if the church boy take you down? You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Well, knock you out.
We kind of grew up before that anti-bully culture. So
It was pro-bully.
it was probably pro-bully. So things are a little different for us than it is this generation.
Yeah, and the reason, let me clarify that. When I say pro-bully, I mean in the sense of if you were getting bullied, the way to respond to a bully was to bully back. And so it was like pro-bully in the sense of if I went home and say I got bullied, then it was just like, well, the mob, punch him in the face.
Right.
So it's like, oh, so I become the bully.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And that was the way we settled bullying in our day.
Right.
I don't think our parents, well, I can't speak for anyone else, but I would say we're the generation where our parents didn't shape our identity. Because a lot of things, because I think about that instance right there, what I just said, and I mean, I only have daughters, but if I had a son, if I saw his personality wasn't to fight, I wouldn't say his response to a bully should be go punch him in the face. I would teach my son how to fight. I would teach my girls how to fight. So I know girls get bullied as well. So I didn't mean to make the assumption that girls, but I'm saying like my conversation with a girl would never be to go punch somebody in the face. So that's what I meant by that. But with my son, either I would kind of look at him and I'd be like, well, what do you want to do? Dad, I wanted to punch him in the face. And it's kind of like, well, is it a way to avoid that? Like, you know what I mean? Did he put his hands on you? Now, that is also a big difference. If the bullying is verbal, like internet, or is it physical.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Back when we were growing up, it was only typically physical.
Right.
Um, and so it was indicative of our parents to kind of be like, well, if a fight, you can't run. You got to go to school every day. So unless we're going to transfer you school, you're going to have to fight.
Yeah.
That's what was told to boys anyway.
Yeah.
So, but I realized that our generation had broke a lot of cycles that the generation before laid down. Because I know there's a lot of things that we were taught that we're not teaching to our generation. I think we have a lot of our kids, they have a lot more freedom of expression,
Yeah.
freedom to be different. It's a term in psychology called stereotype threat.
Mm.
And stereotype threat is whatever the stereotype is about your race, your gender, your class, whatever it is, you believe it, so you associate those behaviors with yourself.
Okay.
I.e., let's say the old trope that black people are lazy.
Mm-hmm.
And then you grow up and say, well, you know I'm lazy because I'm black. You know what I'm saying? So
Yeah.
I'm supposed to be lazy because this is who I am. This is the group I'm part of. So stereotype threat is something that some of us suffer from, and we hold those negative images against ourselves.
Yeah.
I know it was a lot of things that I did, reading the type of books that I like to read, even getting cornrows. I remember Granddad, when I got cornrows, he was just kind of like, what, you want to be a sissy? You know what I mean? And it was just kind of like,
Old school.
I was like, I'll be a sissy then, but I'm getting my hair braided. You know what I'm saying? Like, I remember, growing up, cornrows, tattoos, gold teeth. If you had any of those three, you were labeled a certain way.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? I had I have all three, but I also have the intellect that they would assume that you couldn't have if you were those things. You know what I'm saying? So it's like we broke a lot of chains. Now you go into corporate America, you see people with dreads, you see people with tattoos, you see police officers with tattoos and gold teeth. Like, the lines are so blurred now that identity has shifted to just culture.
I had my first 2 years of high school at one school, Carver, which, to me the atmosphere, wasn't
The Bears.
the Bears. The atmosphere wasn't very.
The Bears.
I'm trying to figure out how to say this. It wasn't pro learning, if
No.
I can say that. Man, it feels
It was
rude.
hood.
It feels
hood.
rude to
For
say.
it to be a vocational school,
Yeah.
of a certain
Right.
grade caliber student,
Yeah.
it was hood.
Yeah, so I remember being there and like, oh, nobody here is interested in this. I guess I'm not interested. And I was really, but I just kind of went with the flow. Then I transferred to Catonsville, and the kids were, honed in and focused, and it was cool to listen to the teacher and to, be quiet. And I was just like, oh, okay. And then I did that, and it was kind of stupid because, I started to excel once I saw like, oh, everybody learning, we serious. All right, I'll be serious. And so I had that kind of mentality back then of like, I'll just go with the flow of what everybody else is doing. I didn't do my own thing. I didn't have the strength or the fortitude to just make my own decision about how I want to operate.
And see, I was the opposite because I thought I couldn't learn. I knew I was intelligent, but classroom environments never satisfied me. I couldn't ask questions. I couldn't use independent individual thought. If a book didn't make sense to me, if I say Christopher Columbus, how he discovered something if Indians was already here, if we all came from Africa, then the Indians discovered America. You know what I'm saying? And it was just kind of like, there was no room for free-flowing thought. And so I thought, I must be dumb. You know what I mean? And so, by the time I got to 8th grade, that kind of made school obsolete to me. I just, kind of stopped going. I still don't know how I graduated. But whatever they did, they pushed me through. And, I was at Carver I was enrolled at Carver for a semester. I don't know how long I actually went. But I do remember when I got enrolled at Walbrook, and they kept us in all the kids that were quote unquote, it was some people that signed up for Maritime Academy, and then sometimes you were just placed there based off of your your background. What else would happen to me? I can't speak for anybody else. They just told me I was going to be there. I wasn't allowed to choose what academy I wanted to be in. They was like, he's going down there. You know what I'm saying? So all my teachers were commanders and master sergeants. They were ex-military, ex-Navy. They may have been active duty. I'm not sure. It was one commander, Commander Maddox. And he called me to the front of his class one day when I was leaving, and he was like, Jonathan, you're an enigma. I had no idea what that means, but you know what it sounds close to.
Yeah.
So, and then he saw my confusion and he clarified. He was like, an enigma is someone who just learns differently, who's kind of eclectic and very diverse in a certain way.
Yeah.
And so he was like, he gave me a big packet, and he told me, if you can do this packet, no matter how long it take, by the end of the year, he was like, if it take 2 weeks, you're done as far as my class.
Yeah.
And it was English. I had never passed English 1. So I was in English 2. So he gave me English 1, and I knocked it out in like 2 weeks. So he gave me English 2, knocked it out in like 3 weeks. And then he was like, by the time I was done with his particular class, I was in English 4, which was 12th grade level English, and I was still technically in the 9th grade homeroom.
Right.
But I was ready for more.
Yeah.
I was like, this all we got? Like, because he put me, he allowed me to know that the way I learn is through figuring it out on myself.
Okay.
You know, I can't be orated to. I can't be dictated to. I give Commander Maddox the utmost credit because it reminded me of kind of like a Goodwill Hunting moment.
Yeah.
Like, I didn't know my talent.
Yeah.
And so when I say part of my high school age shaped my, and actually, so saying that actually changed my, in the beginning I said I didn't have much of high school shaping, but that is the moment that I knew that I was smart and that I could learn. It's just that I like to learn on my own.
Yeah.
I like to read. I like to interpret. I need space to really magnify my thoughts, and even if I'm wrong, check myself to bring my thoughts back into a realistic point of view.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
What's the one with Robin Williams and
Dead Poet Society?
Dead Poet Society, goodness gracious. That's the one where, to me, where when I saw the charisma of the teacher that stood aside from like the curriculum or, you know, how things were supposed to be, and like really motivated these students to carpe diem, seize the day, you know, to be bold and daring. It's like that touched my heart.
Yeah, I mean,
Let me go and stop this.
All right. Sun Kiss.
What's the last time you said though?
Sun Kiss. It's like, you were talking about Dead Poet Society.
Oh yeah, just how that motivated me to look deeper than, you know, just my day-to-day mundane school routine.
So I think the key to this episode, regardless of what, is don't let anybody tell somebody that they're a nobody. And that goes for everybody. You know what I'm saying? Everybody. If you hear anybody call somebody a nobody, it's almost an oxymoron to say nobody. Because if you're a physical person, you're somebody. And to anyone who's suffering from identity crisis, find your center, find your peace, find the thing that makes you smile. That's who you are. The things that bring you joy, the reason you wake up in the morning and switch your feet out the bed, that's who you are. You know what I'm saying? And that's what you need to hold on to. That's what you need to remember. And that's what you need to focus on. And not focus on what anybody else has to say, what anybody else did 5, 10, 15 years ago, or even now if you're still in that situation. That is not what defines you. You define you. Your passions define you. Your love defines you. Your friends. You know what I mean? The people that's your true. And when I say friends, I mean those true friends that want what's best for you even if they get nothing out of it. I heard Andy Stanley said, it's not about what you do, it's about who you raise. You know what I'm saying? Because your impact is felt from what you put out.
Right.
It's not what you keep in. It's not what you hoard. You know what I'm saying? It's what you put out.
I also say that it's a difference between your identity and then your behavior. Because your behavior can be unsavory.
Yeah.
And if somebody has an issue with your behavior, then that's something to maybe look into. But just your being,
That's a good
you're
point.
walking into the room, being who you are, then that shouldn't be contested because it's you. It's uniquely you.
That's a really good point. That's a really good point.
I guess I mean, don't be a jerk.
We're going to wrap it up there, yo. Thank you guys for tuning in. This has been Grown Mannerisms, being fluid with the currents of life. I'm John.
I'm Bonnie.
All right, salute, man. Thank y'all for tuning in.